Most American gardeners replace their container flowers every single spring. Same trip to the nursery. Same plants. Same disappointment by August. What nobody at that garden center will ever tell you is that 15 perennial flowers exist that bloom longer than almost anything else you can grow, come back every year without being replaced, and actually perform better in containers than they do in the ground. One of them on this list blooms for 7 straight months. Another one attracts more butterflies per square foot than almost any other container plant in America. And the one I saved for number 1 is the plant I would keep if I could only keep a single container on my entire porch. Pull out something to write with. Before plant number 1, drop your US state in the comments right now. Your hardiness zone changes everything about which of these 15 plants will perform best in your specific containers. I will be calling out zones by name throughout this entire script, so find yours and pay close attention. And if Backyard Homestead Company is not already in your subscription list, subscribe right now. Every week, this channel delivers practical zone-specific information that saves American gardeners real money and stops them from buying plants that will not survive July. Subscribe so it finds you automatically every single week. Plant number 1. Catmint, Nepeta. Most American gardeners underplant this one badly, and that is a genuine shame. Catmint blooms from late May through October in most U.S. containers. That is 5 straight months of soft lavender blue clouds sitting at the edge of your pot without asking for anything complicated in return. The secret to keeping it going that long is one clean cutback by 1/3 right after the first big June flush. Cut it back, step away, and within 3 weeks it returns fuller and more loaded with color than the first time. 3 benefits you need to know. First, every bee and butterfly in your zip code will find it. Catmint is one of the strongest pollinator attractors available to American container gardeners at any price point. Second, the aromatic foliage repels mosquitoes and biting insects naturally without any spray or treatment on your part. Third, it is drought tolerant once established, meaning 1 deep watering per week through summer is genuinely sufficient. Best varieties: Walker's Low for reliability, Cat's Meow for smaller containers, 6 Hills Giant for a bold statement pot on a front porch. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. Southern gardeners in zones 8 and 9. Give it afternoon shade, and it performs through your heat without complaint. Plant number 2. Coneflower, Echinacea. Before you decide you already know everything about this one, stop. The Echinacea most American gardeners are still buying is the old version. Plant breeders have completely transformed this plant, and the new varieties bloom from early summer clear through fall in containers, often 8 to 10 continuous weeks without interruption. 3 benefits. First, over 30 species of native bees are documented foragers on coneflower. Put 1 container of Echinacea on your porch, and you have created a genuine pollinator station. Second, the seed heads feed goldfinches and chickadees straight through winter. Your container earns its space 12 months of the year. Third, it is drought tolerant, deer resistant, and requires almost no intervention once established in a container with proper drainage. Best varieties: Magnus Purple for reliability, White Swan for elegance, Hot Paprika for the most dramatic color available right now. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Deadhead consistently through summer to extend bloom. Leave seed heads standing in fall. Never cut them down in October. Plant number 3. Perennial Salvia. This is the plant that solved the dead midsummer container problem that drives American gardeners absolutely crazy every July. While everything else in your pots looks spent and tired, Perennial Salvia is hitting its peak in deep violet, cobalt blue, and rich burgundy red, colors that hold their intensity through full summer heat when every pastel in your arrangement has already washed out. Free benefits. First, it blooms from late spring through fall, one of the longest natural windows of any container perennial on this list. Second, bees and hummingbirds are strongly attracted. Salvia produces nectar continuously through its bloom window. Third, deer and rabbits find the aromatic foliage deeply unappealing, making it one of the most reliable wildlife-resistant container plants available. Best varieties: Amistad for heat tolerance, black and blue for hummingbird attraction, Maynight for cooler northern containers. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. The secret to keeping it producing all season is consistent deadheading. Cut spent flower spikes back to the next set of leaves, and new stems emerge within 2 weeks. Neglect that one task, and the show slows considerably. Plant number 4. Heuchera, coral bells. This is the only plant on this entire list that earns its container space even on the days it is not blooming. The flowers are delicate wands of coral, pink, or white rising above foliage from late spring through midsummer. But the real performance is the foliage itself: deep burgundy, burnt caramel, lime green, silver, colors that hold from March through December in most U.S. climates. Free benefits. First, it genuinely thrives in shade, making it one of the most valuable container perennials for north-facing porches, covered patios, and spaces where almost nothing else produces color. Second, in zones 7 through 9 it stays fully evergreen, delivering 12 months of container interest without a single additional task. Third, hummingbirds visit the flower wands regularly from late spring through midsummer. Best varieties: Palace purple for dramatic dark foliage, lime Ricky for illuminating shady containers, caramel for warm amber tones that shift visibly through the season. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. Move containers to where they catch 2 to 3 hours of gentle morning light. Not deep shade, not full afternoon sun. That single adjustment produces more color intensity than any fertilizer or amendment you could apply. Plant number 5. Agastache, hyssop. Push a few agastache into a container on a Saturday morning, and by Sunday afternoon something with wings will have already located it. That is not an exaggeration. That is what happens in yards across this country every single summer when this plant hits its bloom stride. Agastache blooms from midsummer through hard frost, one of the strongest late-season performers on this entire list. When everything else in your containers is winding down in August and September, Agastache is just reaching its peak. Free benefits. First, it attracts more hummingbirds per square foot than almost any other container plant available to American gardeners. Second, the vivid coral, magenta, peach, and lilac colors of the summer-long series bring a visual warmth to late-season containers that nothing else replicates. Third, it handles heat and dry conditions that finish off most other flowering perennials, southwest, and southern gardeners in zones 7 through 10. This plant was practically engineered for your conditions. Hardy in zones 5 through 10. The one thing Agastache demands is sharp drainage. Planted in gritty, well-amended soil with excellent water movement, and it thrives. Heavy moisture-retaining mix kills it at the crown, even within its hardiness zone. Plant number 6. Black-eyed Susan. Rudbeckia. One mature black-eyed Susan produces between 80 and 120 simultaneous blooms at peak flowering, not over the course of the season. At one time, standing in front of a container with that many golden yellow flowers open at once is a color impact that is almost impossible to replicate with any other single plant at the same price point. Free benefits. First, it blooms from late June through the first hard frost, one of the longest natural bloom windows of any perennial available to American container gardeners. Second, in late summer when monarch butterflies begin moving south toward Mexico, they stop at Rudbeckia specifically. A container of these on your porch becomes a legitimate way station on one of the most extraordinary migrations on this planet. Third, the seed heads feed goldfinches and house finches actively from October through February. Best varieties: Gold Sturm for reliability, Prairie Sun for a fresher contemporary look, Cherry Brandy for unusual copper-orange tones. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Leave seed heads standing through winter. The birds depend on them, and your container remains visually active long after the blooms finish. If this list is already giving you real information you have never come across before, subscribe to Backyard Homestead Company right now. This is exactly what this channel delivers every single week: specific, practical, honest content that saves you real money and real frustration. Subscribe and it finds you automatically. One tap. Free. Always will be. Plant number 7. Catmint Walker's Low. Wait, catmint already appeared at number 1. This entry belongs to its close relative and container companion, hardy geranium, cranesbill, specifically the variety called Roseanne. When most people hear the word geranium, they picture that red annual in a window box that gets thrown out every October. That plant and this plant share a name and almost nothing else. Roseanne produces vivid blue-violet flowers that bloom longer than any other hardy geranium variety on the U.S. market, running from April through September in containers with one light trim after the first big flush in early summer. Free benefits. First, it handles both full sun and partial shade without complaint, one of the most placement-flexible container perennials on this list. Second, small native bees and hoverflies that cannot access larger, deeper flowers find hardy geranium wide open and easy to work all season long. Third, it spreads into a soft mounding form that fills container edges and spills gracefully over pot rims in a way that nothing else closes as beautifully. Hardy in zones 4 through 8. Pacific Northwest and New England gardeners especially. This plant performs at its absolute best in your cooler, moister growing conditions. Plant number 8. Astilbe. When people see astilbe in bloom, they assume it must be difficult. The feathery plumes look like something pulled from a professional florist arrangement. That assumption is completely wrong, and containers actually make this plant perform better than any ground planting in the same yard. In the ground, astilbe depends entirely on whatever moisture the surrounding soil happens to hold. In a container, you control exactly how much water it receives. That control produces bigger plumes, longer bloom periods, and cleaner foliage than open ground planting under identical conditions. Free benefits. First, it blooms from early to mid-summer with plumes that last for weeks and transition to warm russet brown through fall, providing container interest well beyond the bloom window. Second, it genuinely thrives in shade, making it the strongest flowering shade container perennial available to American gardeners. Third, pollinators work the plumes actively through the bloom period, bringing visible wildlife activity to covered porches and shaded patios where most flowering plants simply do not perform. Best varieties: Bridal Veil for pure white elegance, Fennel for deep red drama, Sprite for compact shell pink containers. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. Unlike most drought-tolerant perennials on this list, astilbe genuinely prefers consistent moisture, which containers make completely straightforward to manage. Plant number 9. Lavender. The premium moisture control potting mix sitting on the shelves of every American garden center right now is the fastest way to kill lavender. Lavender evolved on rocky Mediterranean hillsides with almost no soil nutrition and near-zero moisture retention. That rich, moist mix most gardeners automatically reach for kills it every single time, and nobody at that garden center will ever tell you that. The fix is straightforward. Mix standard potting soil with 1/3 coarse perlite before planting. Use containers with a minimum of 3 drainage holes. Remove saucers entirely. That combination makes lavender nearly indestructible in a container. 3 benefits. First, it blooms from June through August, with deadheading pushing some varieties into September, and the fragrance released when you brush the foliage is one of the most immediate sensory rewards a container garden delivers. Second, the essential oils repel mosquitoes and biting insects naturally. Place it exactly where you sit outside on warm evenings. Third, the silvery foliage provides container structure and visual interest through fall and winter, even after blooms finish. Best varieties. Hidcoat for cold hardiness down to zone 5. Phenomenal for southern heat and humidity in zones 6 through 9. Grosso for the highest fragrance concentration available. Never fertilize lavender in a container. Rich nutrients produce soft, weak growth with almost no fragrance. Neglect is not just acceptable. Neglect is the correct technique. Plant number 10. Russian sage. Russian sage performs better in a container than it does in the ground. Not equally well. Better. The contained root system encourages more compact, upright growth than open soil ever produces, and the bloom period is something most American gardeners have never experienced from a single container plant. Once established, Russian sage blooms continuously from July through October, for straight months of blue-purple flowers on silver-white stems. Most flowering perennials give American container gardeners 4 to 6 weeks of color if conditions are ideal. Russian sage gives 4 full months regardless of conditions. 3 benefits. First, no pest pressure whatsoever. Deer avoid it completely, and the aromatic foliage repels insects without any spray or treatment. Second, even after blooming ends, the silver architectural stem structure provides genuine winter container interest when every other pot on your street looks bare and forgotten. Third, it requires exactly 1 maintenance task per year. Cut it back to 6 inches in late February. 30 seconds of work returns a fuller, more floriferous plant than the season before. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. In zone 4, move the container against a protected south-facing wall before hard freeze arrives. Right now, think about your own containers. Are there spots on your porch or patio where you lose plants to drought, neglect, or heat every single summer? Drop the answer in the comments below. Every plant still coming on this list was chosen specifically for those exact conditions. Plant number 11. Sedum stonecrop. The better your container soil, the worse this plant looks. That is not a misprint. Each sedum leaf stores water inside its own tissue like a built-in reservoir. It does not depend on you remembering to water. It depends entirely on itself. Sedum planted in lean, slightly poor container mix stays compact, colorful, and structured all season long. Rich fertilized soil produces weak, floppy growth with almost no visual impact. Stop fertilizing it completely. The plant rewards that neglect with better form, stronger color, and cleaner structure every single season. 3 benefits. First, established sedum survives 6 to 8 weeks of zero watering and bounces back without permanent damage. The most drought-tolerant container perennial on this entire list. Second, the fall color display, deep copper, warm red, dusty pink, peaks exactly when most other containers look spent and tired, giving you a plant that saves your porch display in October. Third, Bees work the flower clusters actively in late summer and early fall when most other nectar sources have already finished. Best varieties: Autumn Fire for upright copper-pink fall display, Dragon's Blood for vivid red low-growing coverage, Matrona for tall architectural burgundy stems. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Water deeply once when first planted, then cut back to once every 2 to 3 weeks. When fall arrives, stop watering entirely. Plant number 12. Penstemon. Hummingbirds have known about this plant for centuries. American gardeners are only now catching up with what those birds figured out a long time ago. Penstemon is native to North America. It evolved here, and there are species and varieties adapted to nearly every single U.S. region, from dry Rocky Mountain slopes to humid southeastern gardens to cold northern borders in zones 3 and 4. The tubular flowers come in vivid scarlet, rich purple, deep pink, and soft lavender, and they bloom from late spring through midsummer, with certain varieties continuing into fall. The benefits: first, plant 3 or more together in a sunny, well-drained container, and from Memorial Day onward, ruby-throated hummingbirds in the east and broad-tailed hummingbirds in the west will find them before you have finished watering. Second, it handles dry, rocky container conditions better than almost any other flowering perennial. Lean, gritty soil and sharp drainage are not a compromise for penstemon. They are the ideal conditions. Third, it is genuinely cold hardy across a wider range than most tubular-flowered hummingbird plants, performing reliably down to zone 3 in the right variety. The single most critical care instruction: do not prune it until late spring. Those old stems protect the crown through the cold months. Cutting them back in fall is the #1 reason this plant fails to return in zones 4, 5, and 6. Plant number 13. Scabiosa. Pincushion flower. This one looks so delicate and refined sitting in a container that most people assume it must be difficult and fussy. It is neither. Scabiosa blooms from June through late August with consistent deadheading, pushing some varieties clear into October. The soft lavender blue and clean white flowers carry the feeling of a wildflower meadow, even in the most structured formal container arrangement on a porch. For benefits: first, it is one of the best and longest-lasting cut flowers of any perennial on this list. A single established plant can supply fresh cuts for the house all summer long. Second, painted lady and swallowtail butterflies are particularly drawn to scabiosa at peak bloom, turning your container into a butterfly landing pad from June through late summer. Third, it is cold hardy to zone 3, a surprising fact given how refined and delicate the plant appears. Fourth, it moves beautifully in a breeze on long, slender stems, adding a soft, natural motion to container arrangements that rigid, upright plants simply cannot provide. Best varieties: butterfly blue for extended bloom, pink mist for soft complementary tones, deep water for rich, deep blue intensity. Hardy in zones 3 through 7. Deadhead consistently to push bloom into October and prevent excessive self-seeding in container arrangements. Before the final 2 plants, if you have made it this far and this information is genuinely changing how you think about your container garden, share this video with one gardening friend right now. They need this information just as much as you do, and finding it on their own could take years. Hit share before you forget. Plant number 14. Crocosmia. This is the most visually dramatic late summer container perennial on this entire list, and the fact that most American gardeners have never planted it is one of the great missed opportunities in U.S. container gardening. When Crocosmia hits full bloom in July and August, the arching stems loaded with fiery orange-red flowers look like living flames moving in the container. There is genuinely nothing else in the summer container garden that produces that specific quality of heat and drama. Free benefits. First, hummingbirds are drawn irresistibly to the tubular orange flowers from July onward. Place this container near a window you look out of regularly, and you will have a front row seat to daily hummingbird visits through the heart of summer. Second, the arching stems make extraordinary long-lasting cut flower arrangements. One established container provides fresh dramatic cuts all through July and August. Third, the strappy foliage provides structural container interest from early spring long before the flowers open. Hardy in zones 5 through 9. In zones 5 and 6, move containers to a protected space before hard freeze and mulch the top of the pot heavily. That single step gives the corms exactly what they need to return strong every spring. Best varieties. Lucifer for the most vivid scarlet orange available, Emily McKenzie for deep orange with darker centers, Solitaire for unusual bronze yellow tones. Plant number 15. Purple coneflower. Echinacea purpurea. If I had to keep only one container plant from everything on this list, just one, it would be this. Native to the North American prairies. Hardy across zones 3 through 9. Drought tolerant once established. Deer resistant. Blooming from midsummer straight into fall, often 8 to 10 continuous weeks. Medically significant, ecologically essential, and one of the most complete pollinator container plants in the entire temperate world. The flowers are broad, daisy-like, rose-pink to deep purple petals sweeping back from a raised spiky bronze-orange central cone. When a bumblebee lands on that cone and works it systematically, it looks like something out of a nature documentary. Except it is happening in your container every single day for months. 4 benefits. First, over 30 species of native bees and more than 20 species of butterflies are documented foragers on purple coneflower. That is a verified ecological relationship, not a general pollinator claim. Second, the same plant growing in your container for color is the one filling entire supplement sections at your local pharmacy. Echinacea root and flower extracts are among the most commercially distributed herbal products in America. Third, goldfinches use the seed heads as their primary winter food source across enormous portions of North America. Leave them standing always. Cutting them down in autumn is one of the most counterproductive things you can do in a wildlife-friendly container garden. Fourth, it compounds. Year 1 is infrastructure. Year 3 is multiple stems and dozens of flowers. Year 5 is a self-sustaining colony that feeds birds, bees, and butterflies from July straight through January without you touching it once. Best varieties. Magnus purple for the largest flower heads, white swan for elegant contrast, Kim's knee-high for compact container form. That is your number 1 container perennial. And it costs the same as the annual petunia sitting next to it at the nursery, except it never needs replacing. 3 container secrets nobody tells you. Secret 1. Drainage. Every container needs a minimum of 3 drainage holes. Add a 2-inch layer of coarse gravel at the base. Remove saucers from all drought-tolerant varieties on this list entirely. Water should drain visibly within 15 seconds of application. If it pools, the roots are already at risk. Secret 2. Container size. The minimum size for every plant on this list is 16 inches in diameter. In winter, small containers freeze solid. A perennial in a 10-inch pot in Zone 5 has almost no insulation between its roots and a hard freeze. Container size is not just about summer growth. It is about winter survival. Secret 3. Soil mix. Use 50% quality potting mix, 30% coarse perlite, and 20% compost. That combination drains well, holds enough moisture between waterings, and feeds slowly through the season without synthetic fertilizer. Backyard Homestead Company releases practical zone-specific container gardening content every single week. Content built for American gardeners who want real results without starting over from scratch every single April. If you have spent too many springs replacing plants that were never built to survive, that cycle ends now. Subscribe to this channel. Free. Always will be. And the information keeps coming every week. Before you close this video, drop 3 things in the comments. Which plants from this list are you adding to your containers this season? What U.S. state are you gardening in? And what is one plant you spent good money on last year that did not make it to fall? Those answers help Backyard Homestead Company build the exact content your garden actually needs next. Next week on Backyard Homestead Company, the 10 most common mistakes American gardeners make when planting perennials in containers. And number 3 on that list is something almost every single person watching this video right now does without realizing it is slowly killing their plants. That video goes live this week. If you are not subscribed, it will not find you. Hit that button right now. Go fill those containers. See you in the next one.